Hey, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about some more advanced topics with strings. Again, these are things you'll probably use regularly on the job, and I want to talk about a couple of gotchas that can happen too. And so we'll start out with our console.write line. We're writing out the usual hello world. And so what we want to do is we want to write out something besides hello world, right? And so we'll say string test string super original. So this is a test string. And we'll put a period in there, quotation marks to close it off, and a semicolon to end the line. Okay, so we look at the green text. Test string is assigned but its value is never used. Okay, so we'll go ahead, copy test string and put it down here into console.write line. Click the button, and as we expect based on previous lessons, we see this is a test string. And so far so good. But let's just say, test string, this is a test string. It sounds kind of, boring. So let's spice it up a little bit here, okay? So what we could do is we could do test string dot replace. It replaces a function. You remember I talked about functions earlier, just like console.write line is a function. And what it does is it allows us to take a string and then replace a value in that string with another value. So in this case, test string is kind of boring, so we're going to replace it. So we'll put test in there, and the first value or parameter, again, a parameter is a value that's passed to a function. We're going to replace it with happy because, hey, who doesn't like happy, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and run this, and we can expect that we'll probably see happy being printed out here. Oh, no, what happened here? It says test string. Okay, let's think about this for a second. We'll go back and look at the code. And so we look at this test string.replace for a second. Okay, everything looks good. We're replacing the right text. We're like putting the right variable there. But let's look a little more closely at this. So we have replace. And if we look at this right here, we see that the replace function, if you look down at the little purple box or purple cube, next to that says string. And so what this is telling us right here is it gives a string back. Okay, so if it's giving a string back, what are we doing with that string? So we know that if we have test string and we put it or we print it out, it's still coming back. It's not a happy string. And what's happening here is that a lot of times we'll see a function which returns a value, and what's happening is that the original value is not being changed, okay? And so in this case, we do this replace, but what's happening here is that the program is giving us a whole new value to use. It's not touching this value up here. So let's think about this for a second. If we're assigning test string up here, and this is the value we're giving it, then we could come down here and get a new value from this, right? So we'll have to assign it to a new variable. So we do string, new, let's do a happy string. Test string, okay, so great, looks good. We'll go ahead and run it. Oh man, we still have test string coming up. Okay, we'll give you a gold ribbon, actually a figurative gold ribbon. It's not actually gold, it's kind of like a yellow mylar. And you want to actually get it if you can kind of figure out what happened here. Simple error, it happens a lot, people just don't catch it. Okay, so we had happy string right here. We forgot to replace the test string down there. You would be surprised how many times this happens, where a programmer will create a new value and forget to assign it, where it's previously being used. It happens. It's something that can be caught pretty quickly with good testing, but we'll talk about that much later. Okay, so now we have happy string is equal to the value gained from test string.replace. Go ahead and run it again. Hey, our string's happy, and so are we. Okay, looking good. Now let's just say here that somebody looks at this and they say, well, why should I make a whole new string? That's kind of dumb, And why can't I just go ahead and, you know, and just reuse test string up here, right? And so we'll come in here, we'll replace happy string. You know, happy string goes away, we're sad. And we forgot to go ahead and update that. So we'll come over here, copy test string, go replace that with, there we go. So happy string is replaced with test string. And, you know, let's see what we get here. So our string's still happy. That's good. But stop and think about what's happening here, though, okay? So we have the old value. We do something to the old value. And what we're doing with that gives us a new string. Gets assigned over here. And generally speaking, anytime you have a situation like this, something that happens on the right-hand side will happen before something happens to the left of it. This can be important later in dealing with what's called order of operations. And it's kind of a fancy term for just knowing what goes or what happens first in a computer program. Most of the time anymore, with our more modern environments, this probably won't be a problem, but sometimes it could also be something that will come back to cause errors if you're not familiar with it. So we'll definitely be covering that later on. But for now, right here, so we have test string. Test string replaces test with happy. We get the new test string, we use it. Now, what would happen here if somebody wanted to continue to use the value of test string, or if they wanted to show what it originally was? So what they do is copy the whole console.write line, come up here, go ahead and run this, and we'll see a test string and a happy string. So the string was just kind of meh before, now it's happy. Great, but again, what happens if you want to use this value later on down here? Like, you know, you want to, like, let's just say, we'll come in here, we'll do old string. And we'll put a colon on here, put a space, and we'll do our plus syntax to join a string. And then we'll come down here, we'll write new string. Okay, so we'll run this again. Yeah, old string, boring test string, new string, happy string. But again, what if this is a value you want to continue to use? And this is kind of a discussion that comes up from time to time. And it's one of those discussions really where people will argue over essentially what's a corner case. And so it can be slightly faster at times to create or to reuse an old variable instead of creating a new one. But really more often what happens than not is simply somebody doesn't want to go ahead and define a new string and name a new string and add that string value someplace. So far so good, but you know, after using test string here, but they want to do something with a test string down here, all of a sudden that value's changed. They may not notice it. So really this is almost sort of a code smell. And by what I mean by that is it's something that is being done that really is probably not the best way to do it. And again, there's probably cases where it does make sense, but more often than not, if somebody came to me and showed me this code, I would say, okay, you know, don't reuse that value. Because once you reuse a value once, you may reuse it other times, and all of a sudden you don't know what that value is. So it's always better to go ahead and create like a new variable to hold a new value, right? So we'll go back and do string. Let's see, whoops. We don't care about that stuff. String. Sometimes the IntelliSense can get a little aggressive here. So we'll do happy string. Okay, good. So we've defined this as like being, let's see, this string variable again. We'll come down here, we'll drop that in, and we can be pretty sure that's going to work. Well, I'll show you something, one other thing right here with variables, and this will apply a lot in different places. So C# has this var keyword, okay? Keyword is just something which is reserved by the language to do certain things. In this case, what var does is it says, okay, I'm saying that I'm defining a variable or creating a box, and I have the label inside the box, but I really have no idea what's going to go in that box. But I can look over here and see that, okay, we have a string, it's replacing something, it gives me a new string. And then I can use that new string right here. So by default, it makes this a type of string. So we can go ahead and run it. Still a happy string. Now, the C# style guide is a little bit vague on this, and they say that, okay, you can use var, you can use string, and there's arguments that people made back and forth. I've been on both sides of those arguments myself. But when you're learning how to code, it really sometimes is just better to go ahead and type out the variable name. Yeah, people are more used to reading code, they will know what that means, but even then they'll have to go back and look to see what that function is returning, right? And sometimes too, you can run into issues where you may be changing the variable from one type to another, things like that. And if you're doing var, it won't work for you, okay? We'll get into some of those cases later, but for right now, go ahead and use the actual type of variable. So, use the type of the box that you have instead of just relying on, writing a slightly shorter word to get the same effect. And so what we've learned here a little bit is around how to manipulate strings, to replace values in them, and also a little bit about variable assignment. Again, that's one of those things that people don't think that much about. They take it for granted, but there's so many ways that can cause problems for them. And so we also just want to get those good habits first, right? So until next time, a little bit of spoiler, we're going to be talking about a whole new type of box called the integer. And if you know what an integer is, they're simply going to be working with a box that takes numbers. See you soon.